Okay, so as you know, I'm Lesley Downs. I'm a personal development and relationship specialist working with couples and individuals and sometimes within organisations to help people to have the relationships that they want and dream of. I'd like to start today by asking you a question. Raise your hand if you're currently in a relationship. Great. So everybody's got their hand raised, which is quite right. But of course, we're all in relationships all the time, with everyone around us, with our family, with our friends, with our partners, and what I call our fraternity, the people that we come across during the course of the day. And you're even in a relationship of a type with the person who you've just swapped business cards with. But those relationships are all based on communication. And communication is a really important part of relationships. So let's just have a look at what the definition of a relationship is. The way in which two or more people or things are connected, or the state of being connected. And connection is really important to us as humans because it's one of our basic 6 human needs. We need to be connected to other people. And that is all part of the communication, the way that we communicate. Because the interesting thing is that I'm guessing that when I said, are you in a relationship, you probably thought I meant, are you in a personal relationship, a committed relationship with a partner, a romantic sexual type relationship? Yes or no? Is that what you thought? So that's an interesting part about communication because we make assumptions all the time. We assume what the other person's saying, and that's not always just right. Sometimes it can be misconstrued, misunderstood, because we have a perception of what the person has said that isn't what they meant. Do a quick experiment. I just want you to close your eyes for a second and think of an elephant. Just see an elephant in your mind's eye. Okay, open your eyes. Would anybody like to tell me what they saw? Tell me about their elephant.
My mother-in-law.
Thank you, Clancy. Anyone else got something different?
I saw my daughter Winter because she went to South Africa and she rode an elephant.
She rode an elephant. And what kind of elephant was that? Do you know?
It was a male African elephant.
Male African elephant. Anybody have anything different to that?
Dumbo.
Sorry?
Dumbo.
Dumbo. So tell me about your Dumbo.
Just an image of Dumbo, a cartoon character.
Cartoon character. So the interesting thing there is that I just said one word, elephant, and we've already had 3 or 4 different pictures of what that looked like for them. But I can guarantee that if I went around the room, everybody in the room would have something different because we would perceive it in a slightly different way. And that's part of an exercise that I do sometimes with couples and sometimes within organisations with teams of people, because it demonstrates to them that they are seeing things in different ways, and that can lead to misunderstandings and sometimes to conflict. And that's one of the things that I deal with all the time in my role as a relationship specialist, is conflict. Now let me ask you another question. Have you ever been at a crossroads in a relationship? And this time I do mean a personal, committed relationship with a partner. Have you ever been at that place where you're asking yourself the question, do I go? Do I stay? Shall I try and work it out, or shall I move on? And I guess we've all been there at some point in our lives. And that's the kind of thing that I work with all the time. Couples come in and talk about the crossroads in their relationships. They're not sure which way to go. Statistics tell us that 1 in 5 people are unhappy in their relationships. I'm passionate about trying to change that. It's a pretty big challenge, but I'm willing to give it a go. But what I've learned over the years is that to try to improve relationships, there are 6 basic things that we need to do. And what I've done is I've put them into the acronym BECOME. And the first of those is to build a bridge. Now you might ask, well, what's that got to do with relationships, building bridges? just imagine on the side of a river, and you're standing on the riverside, and here you're really unhappy, and the relationship isn't going well. You don't talk to each other. The intimacy's gone, and you don't know how to get it back. Perhaps you're arguing all the time. Your parenting styles are different, but you're unhappy. But on the other side of the river, you can see that there are people who are really happy in their relationships. Over here, on this side of the river, people have got it right. They talk to each other, they share things, they go out and enjoy things together, they share the responsibilities of parenting and the household chores. So would you agree that it might be a reasonable thing to say that you need a bridge to get you from this side of the river to the other side of the river? And what I've learned is that to help you to build that bridge, there are some elements that you need. And one of them is to explore. And what I mean by that is to explore how you got to where you are now. If you are in this unhappy place, how did you get there? As a couple, what did you do? What went wrong? How? When? And that's the kind of thing that I do. Because when I'm working, my job is to be really curious and to ask lots of questions, to find out, to get the couple to be aware of what they're doing, how they got to this place, so that we can start to change things. And the next thing in my BECOME acronym is about communication. We need to be able to communicate. To have a meaningful relationship, we need to be able to communicate well. And I help people to do that. Now, sometimes when we're getting into an argument type situation, we're not actually listening to what the other person's saying, because, see if this resonates with you, you're actually building your next comment before the other person has finished speaking. So you can't actually be 100% listening to what they're saying, because you're thinking about what you're going to say next. So an exercise that I do sometimes with clients is called the dialogue, and that's about getting them to slow the conversation down. And what we do is one person is the sender and one is the receiver. And the sender has to give a message, tell them something. I use, as an example, tell the other person something that frustrates you about them. But they have to break the message down into small chunks so that the receiver can actually repeat it back. Everything they say, they actually repeat back. So you have to listen really carefully, repeat back what they say, and then check it out. Make sure that they've understood. Did I get that right? Have I understood what you said? If they say yes, if the sender says yes, then they move on. And towards the end of that conversation, I'll also get them to put in a little bit of empathy. Now, that doesn't mean that they're agreeing with what the other person said. They don't have to agree with that opinion. But to show a little bit of empathy and say, well, actually, that sounds really hard, or that must have been difficult for you, just shows that you've listened. And it's really powerful to be heard, to feel as though you're being heard. So communication is really important. The next thing I do with couples is to think about the outcome, the vision. What do they want for the future? If you're in a pretty bad place, think about where you want to be. What's on the other side of that river? And to do that, I get them to write some sentences about their vision for the future. Because as humans, we often concentrate on what we don't want. People come into my office and talk about what they don't want. I don't want to argue all the time. I don't want to pick his boxer shorts up off the bedroom floor every morning. I don't want to be feeling unloved and uncared for. But what we need to concentrate on as humans is what we do want. Let me give you an example. Think about if you went to Sainsbury's on a Saturday morning with a shopping list of things that you don't want. Imagine standing in Sainsbury's. I don't want bread, I don't want butter, and I certainly don't want sausages. It'd be really hard to do your weekly shop. But that's what we do in our personal lives. We concentrate on the things that we don't want rather than what we do want. So I get people to do an exercise where they write some sentences in the present tense as though it's happening now about what their ideal relationship would look like. Because statistically, we know that if we write things in the present tense as though they're happening now, they're more likely to happen in the future. And then they bring their sentences back and we negotiate and compromise and work out, and they end up with a vision, a mantra, if you like, that is printed out. And I get them to put it on their bathroom wall or their bedroom door so that they see it every day and remember what they're thinking, what their vision is and what they're working towards. And the next thing is about motivation. How many people have started a diet on a Monday morning and given up by Monday evening? I know I have. Lunchtime, yeah. So it's really hard to stay motivated and to stay on track when you're trying to improve something. So I get couples to motivate each other by giving little gifts, little tokens. It might be a promise to make a cup of tea every morning before they go to work, or maybe a bunch of flowers on a Friday. But it's just those little things that help to motivate them and keep them on track. And the last one in my 6 things that you need to build that bridge, to get you from that side of the river to the other side of the river, is to educate yourselves. Because building a bridge can be quite difficult. It can be quite tricky if you've never done it before. So we might need some new skills, some new information. And educating yourself, there's loads of information out there. There's loads of resources, books, videos, YouTube. And of course, if people are working with me, then they get exercises and handouts to go with it. Now, you might be thinking, well, why did she call this presentation today the 4 R's? Because when you're rebuilding and improving on relationships, and you're trying to build that bridge so that you can get from one side of the river to the other, I believe that there are 4 R's that are really important. And the first of those is building rapport. So knowing that you're working together on a relationship and that you're communicating together and building that rapport and emphasising your vision for the future is really important. And the second one is about reawakening senses and sensuality, because often we forget about that. The number of times that I hear couples talking about how they've forgotten how to be together, how to be close together, how to touch, how to just hold somebody's arm because they're scared of what might happen. So we do lots of exercises on reawakening those senses and sensuality. The third R in my 4 R's is about resolving conflict. It's really hard when you're in that relationship and there's constant arguing. And I don't know whether this resonates with any of you, but sometimes we have arguments with a partner that are like a runaway train. You know when you start that where it's going to go, because you say one thing, they say the other, they've got another line, and you push each other's emotional buttons all the time. So I work with people to try to stop that. And you've got a handout in front of you can take away, which is a stop system, which is something that I use with couples all the time. But it also works in other relationships. I've used it in organisations. I've got people who are disagreeing within a department to use this system. And it's about when you get to that point where you start to feel uncomfortable in a conversation because you can see that it's getting out of hand and it's going to start to go wrong, is to actually stop. Now, something that I do with a lot of people is get them to think of a scale of 0 to 10. And if 0 is when you're really calm and 10 is a real toys out of the pram feeling, put yourself on that scale. Where do you think you are? Stop yourself in that conversation. Where am I? Because if you're in the 7 to 10 bracket, you can't, your brain is frazzled. You can't think straight. You can't be logical in the conversation. So you need to get yourself in the 0 to 5 bracket. And that means calming yourself down. So the stop system is about how you do that. So you literally just put your hand out and stop the conversation. The T is for time out, for taking some time to go and calm yourself, to get yourself in that 5 to 0 bracket. The O is for owning your own part. Not blaming the other person whilst you're in your timeout, not thinking about what they've done, but think about what I did. What did I say? Was I being controlling? Was I being intimidating? What was my part in the argument? And the P is for coming back at a point of peace and repair, because if you both come back together and you're owning your own part and talking about what you've learnt within that timeout, then you can come back to a point of peace and repair and maybe offer something, a hug or a kiss or a promise to do something differently in the future. My fourth is restructure, and that's what all of this talk has been about. The building the bridge, the communication, everything that I've talked about is about restructuring your relationship and getting it to a point where you can move forward and have that vision for the future. Now, all this information I've used to create something called the Become Couples Coaching Program. And perhaps that's a topic for another presentation another day. But I want to leave you today with a light bulb moment. And that is, a relationship is like a house. When a light bulb burns out, you don't go and buy a new house. You stay and fix the light bulb. I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you've got any questions, if we've got time, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.